Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about evaluating function notation. So this is a typical type of situation in which you're going to see when you're evaluating function notation. So it looks a little scary, but you have actually done this before. It is just like evaluating expressions. We're just doing it in a little different way of presenting it. So let's do problem number 1. Put a sticky note over that so we don't pay attention to it now. Perfect. Okay, so g of 2. That's how you pronounce it. It's not g parentheses 2. It's called g of 2. Now, I see that I have a g in front. Up at the top, I have some equations. I have g of x equals negative 3x plus 4. F of x equals x squared plus 1, and h of x equals 15 divided by x. These are just different equations. The only thing that's a little bit different than what we've seen is instead of y, we have letters and parentheses and x's in front of the equal sign. They have different letters so that you know what equation to go to. Since my first question right here has a g in front, I'm going to use the equation that has a g in front as well. So that's this one right here. So that's your first step, is identifying the equation that you are going to be using. I have that as step 2 in the notes, but it's okay. Step 1 and step 2 are interchangeable. The next step is to identify what you have. What are your x and your y's? In this problem, I have my x inside the parentheses exchanged out with 2. 2 took its place. So that means in the entire problem where I see an x, I am also going to exchange that out for 2. So let's write that down. We have g of 2 is equal to negative 3. And now instead of x, I'm going to put a 2 and plus 4. So no matter what problem you're doing, wherever you see an x, if there's a number inside the parentheses, you exchange that number with an x. You replace it. Now we're going to move on to step 3. Once you replace this, which is actually step 3, so technically we're moving on to step 4, you're just going to solve. So I'm going to solve using order of operations, or sometimes you just need to simplify. That's okay. I have negative 3 and 2 right next to each other. Negative 3 and 2 next to each other means multiplication. So I know negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And I just have to add 4 at the end. I know I can combine those to get negative 6 plus 4 to equal 2. And I have my answer. Now, these are the common themes that you're going to see throughout this entire video. However, there are some different examples, some different ways in which these problems are going to be presented. So remember, whatever is in place of the x, that number is going to replace the x in the entire equation. You are going to match up your equations with the letters in front. Now let's move on to problem 2. So problem 2 says f of b. Sometimes it's not a letter that's replacing x, or a number that's replacing x. Sometimes it's just another letter. But guess what? It's still the same idea. I'm going to match up my f in front of my problem with the f that is in front of the equation. So I see I need to use this equation. So I have f of b is equal, and then instead of x, I'm going to put b. So I'm going to put b squared plus 1. And I can't do anything else. So that is my final answer. Now I'm going to move on to problem 3. Problem 3 looks a little different. Nothing is replacing the x. The x is just there. So I have h of x is equal to 3. This equal to 3 is the y value. That means this 3 is the y value. That means wherever I see h and x put together, I'm going to put a 3. So again, I'm going to match up my letters in front. And I see way up here, I have h of x is equal to 15 divided by x. So where I see my h and x right next to each other, I'm replacing all of that with 3 because h of x is equal to 3. So I now have 3 equals 15 divided by x. Now this one's a little different. Instead of solving for y or h of x, I am solving for x, but I can use my brain in this situation. 15 divided by what is equal to 3? I know that 15 divided by 5 is equal to 3 because 3 times 5 is going to be 15. And I have my answer. Okay, we have a few more. I know you can do this. Continuing on. Sometimes you see 2 letters in there. Uh-oh. Looks a little scary, but don't worry. You definitely can do it. Because all that we're going to be doing is replacing x with a plus c and then simplifying. That's the same thing that we did in problem 1 and problem 2. So let's continue on. I see that there's a g in front of my parentheses. So I'm going to match that up with this g equation right here. So g of x equals negative 3x plus 4. So scrolling back down, I have g of a plus c is equal to negative 3. And now instead of x, I am putting a plus c. That's okay. All I did was replace it. That's what we did with the other one. But I want to make sure to include that plus 4 right after. Now, before I said you might need to simplify, and this is definitely a case where I can simplify because I can do distributive property. Negative 3 times a is negative 3a. Negative 3 times c is negative 3c, and now I have plus 4. Guess what? That's it. You can't do anything else. You can't combine the A's with the C's, and that 4 doesn't even have a variable at all. So you have your answer. Just try to simplify as much as you can. Okay, we have 2 more left to go. Now, we're going to be focusing on this problem right here. F of 2 plus g of 5. Okay, that one looks a little different. We have 2 different equations and they're separated. So what you need to do is solve for f of 2 and then solve for f of 5. And you're going to take those numbers and add them together. So f of 2. Okay, so I'm matching up my f's and I'm replacing the x with the 2. So f of 2 is equal to 2 squared plus 1. 2 squared is 2 times 2, which I know is 4. And 4 plus 1 is going to equal 5. Great, I have my first problem. Now let's do g of 5. G of 5, I'm matching up my g's. And now wherever I see an x, I'm putting 5. So that is negative 3 times 5 plus 4. So again, all I did was replace. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go to negative 3 times 5, which is negative 15, and then plus 4. Negative 15 plus 4 is going to equal negative 11.